Chapter 6. Let's go home together. Watch your mouth, baby. Sirius POV. 3 sharp knocks on the front door announced Remus's presence, and Sirius gave himself a final check-over in the mirror, taking in the artfully tousled hair that had taken him 3 years and a million tries to perfect in the vintage band tee he'd found just yesterday. He looked hot. Well, he hoped he looked hot. Screw it. Walking out to the front door with his overnight bag, he couldn't help the little skip of excitement he did. And when he opened the door, he could feel his face begin to ache with the grin stretching his lips wide. Hi, he broke off, mouth dropping open at the sight in front of him. How can you dress like a grandpa and still be this hot? Remus let out a huff laugh through his nostrils. Watch it, Bug. The warning made Sirius's heart rate spike, and he couldn't help but pull his lip between his teeth and chew it on it as he surveyed Remus's body. His chocolate brown corduroys and lace-up brogues, the plain white t-shirt and moss green button-up. It shouldn't work so well, nor should it be as attractive as it was. What will you do if I don't? Sirius asked quietly, moving closer to Remus, needing so desperately to touch now that he was allowed. Would you punish me? Setting his big hands on Sirius's hips, Remus quirked an eyebrow and tugged the boy in until their fronts were pressed together. Is this your way of asking for it? While the words rang true, he wasn't ready to admit that Remus was reading him like a book. Instead, he ducked forward until he could hide his face in Remus's neck and inhaled deeply, letting the older man's comforting scent wash over him. He felt Remus's straight-backed posture relax a little as he held Sirius close, kissing his hair and humming. Not ready to admit that one yet, He pulled back, cheeks pink and smile softened, and cleared his throat. Ready to go? Come on then, Bug. A night away with your Mooney. He reached for Sirius's hand, and his heart sang just a little. Are you excited to see my flat? Mm-hmm, Sirius hummed. Although, based on your description, it isn't that different from Atelier, is it? Well, Remus began. I guess the color palette is very much the same, but it's much less hotelish, more lived in. Sirius smiled brightly when the man glanced down at him, replying, Then I'm really excited to see it. I bet it's all comfy and warm and moony. Exiting his building, they approached Remus's bright yellow Jeep together, dropping the man's hand to climb up into the passenger seat and tossing his bag into the back. When Remus rounded the vehicle, he broached the topic, which had been on his mind since he'd first had a lift home. Why is your car so yellow? You don't like it? Remus laughed. It was my dream car when I was in uni and my early 20s, and when I finally had the money to get it a couple of years ago, I saw that you could get it in this color. It's called Hella Yella, and I just fell in love with it. Lily doesn't think it's very me, but I think it's you, Sirius affirmed. Maybe not straight away, but it's everything you are. Big and happy and unapologetically Remus. I love it. A grin pulled at Remus's face, and he used the advantage of mid-afternoon traffic to lean across and kiss Sirius soundly. You're really leaning into using my name as an adjective, aren't you? Thank you, Bug. How far is it to yours? About 25 minutes. Remus glanced over at him. Do you want to pick some music? Grinning evilly, Sirius reached for the touchscreen panel and began flicking through radio stations until he settled on a grime channel with bass that thrummed through the speakers. Is this the kind of music you like? Remus visibly winced as the volume ratcheted up. Taking pity on him, Sirius flicked onto the next channel, turning it down to a gentle background noise. No, I just wanted to make your face do that. I told you to watch your attitude, Bug. It might come back to bite you. He had pretended to stare out the window for 2 whole songs before his cheeks cooled, and he could look at Remus again. Do you want to pick a book while I pop your bag in my room? Sure, Sirius said distractedly. Remus had been right. The main living space of his flat, while much bigger than his room at Atelier, followed the same calming green color scheme with dark wood floors and massive sliding doors which seemed to lead out onto a patio. The library he'd been directed to, however, was a rich royal blue with inbuilt shelving lining 2 walls and a contrasting rug. The central space was dominated by a plush white sofa that seemed simultaneously like a perfect place to spend time reading with a partner, feet tangled together in the center, discussing plot lines well into the night with reading lights, and the biggest spill hazard in the whole place. Perusing the shelves, he finally settled on Little Gold when Remus re-entered the room with his arms held behind his back. "I'm going to start with this one," he proclaimed. "That's a great choice." Remus stepped closer to him. "I got you something," he started. "But I don't know if you'll—" "What did you get me?" Sirius interrupted him. "And also, why did you get me something?" "I liked the idea of us listening to something together." Remus pulled 2 vinyl records from behind his back. "And my guy had these displayed behind the till. I don't know if you like everything she does, but Henry said that these 2 are quite calming. Good for—" "You got me Taylor Swift records?" Sirius said in awe, running a finger along the sleeve of one. "Well, you said that you liked that song for your shower moments last week." Remus was the one to blush a little this time. "And I thought if I'm going to subject you to the dulcet tones of one Freddie Mercury, then I could give Miss Swift a go." "Mooney," Sirius breathed, leaning up to kiss Remus gently. "I love them. They're some of my favorite albums, especially for winding down. There is a problem, though." Remus's relieved grin turned into a slightly sad frown. "What is it?" "There is not a chance in hell I'm going to let us read while we listen to these. They're too deep." Sirius pushed his hair back from his face and glanced around for a turntable. "Where is your record player?" "The living room." Remus gestured over his shoulder, laughing when Sirius immediately took his hand and led him through the sliding panel and back to the main space. Sitting down on the sofa with a big harumph, Sirius gestured to Remus. "Okay, so we have to listen to folklore first, all right?" "Okay, Bug." Remus agreed, setting the vinyl up and joining Sirius on the sofa, seeming to listen intently to the opening notes. "Lie down," Sirius whispered, gazing at Remus from where he was curled up in the corner of the sofa, humming happily when the other man quickly followed his instructions. Climbing over him, Sirius settled his head on his chest and closed his eyes, the familiar lyrics washing over him in comforting waves. When Remus's arm rested heavily between his shoulder blades, he snuggled deeper into his chest and lifted one hand to thread his fingers into his Mooney's hair. "Did you like it?" he asked nervously, worrying the inside of his cheek as Remus sat up and stretched, the record now spinning soundlessly on the player. "I did," Remus said quietly. "The one about failing in the middle really got me." "Which?" Remus paused for a moment, looking over the track list with a critical eye. "This one. I think this is me trying. It felt very personal." Standing, Sirius pressed his face into Remus's back and wrapped him in a tight embrace. "It made me cry the first time I heard it." "I can understand why," he murmured, tugging on Sirius until they were face to face. "And I know what Henry meant now. Very calming and emotive indeed." "Mm-hmm," Sirius hummed. "I'm glad I got to see you hear it for the first time." "Do you want any more, Bug?" Remus offered, the board of cheese, crackers, and meats between them beginning to look a little ransacked. "I'm good," Sirius said quietly, standing and helping Remus shift their dishes back into the kitchen. "Do you have a plan for us tonight?" Running the tap, Remus began rinsing plates as he answered. "I do. First, we're going to have a couple of different conversations." That made Sirius startle a little from where he was putting the food into the fridge. "Bad conversations?" he asked with a worried tone. "No, Bug," Remus assured him, drying his hands on a tea towel and pressing himself into Sirius's back. "But we haven't talked about some specifics that I think we should, okay?" Okay, Sirius breathed in relief. But everything is all right? So all right, Remus reassured him. Nothing is changing. I just want us to understand each other a bit more, and I want to make sure we're being safe. I'm clean, Sirius exclaimed, the word safe taking him directly to a world of STIs and awkward talks with Effie and Fleamont. Muffling a laugh into his hair, Remus nodded. I'd assumed as much, but thank you for reassuring me. If you'd like a copy of my most recent test results, they're just in the drawer over there. He nodded at the sideboard behind the dining table. That's okay, Sirius sighed in relief. I trust you. Framing his face with his hands, Remus leaned down and kissed him gently, confessed, It makes me so happy when you tell me that. Sirius smiled, happy and free, and followed Remus when he led him back to the sofa. So, the first thing I think we need to talk about is safe words, Remus began. Personally, I'm a fan of using traffic lights, especially since you're new to the scene. He paused, and Sirius nodded at him to continue. But if you tell me to stop, I will stop immediately. Sometimes, in more intense scenes, people say stop, but they don't always mean it. So for now, if you tell me to stop, then we'll stop. But in the future, that may become a moment where instead we pause and check in with each other. How does that sound? Good, Sirius mumbled, playing with the sleeve of his borrowed cardigan. How do the traffic lights work? Good question. Remus praised him. And though it made Sirius happy, he was a little sad he had sat down so far away from him. Green is good, and an indication that you're happy with how a scene is progressing. I will check in with you periodically, but you can always use it as a verbal cue to let me know you're really happy with something in particular, okay? At Sirius's yes, he continued. An orange light would tell me that you're maybe feeling overwhelmed or a little uncomfortable, or that you want to slow the pace of what we're doing down. Again, I'll check in every so often, but if you need something to change, you say that word and we'll reassess what we're doing. Maybe take a couple of minutes to cool down before we continue. A red would be stopping immediately, and personally, I will end a scene at a red light. Remus watched him carefully. That means that we would go straight into aftercare, whatever that meant for the two of us, and once we were both calm and comfortable, we would discuss what happened to make us use that word. Us? Sirius asked, a little confused at the plural. Doms can use safe words too, Remus explained. Sometimes scenes can become overwhelming, or a partner's reaction can make you think you've crossed a line and induced panic. I've needed to use them before if I've been surprised in a scene, and especially when I was recovering and playing with Lily, certain activities caused me to react badly. Okay. There is absolutely no shame in using a word bug. I'd prefer that you use them than rather pushing yourself too hard to try and impress me or prove a point. He waited for Sirius's slow nod before he continued. I've said before that this is about us, especially now while we're learning each other. I don't want you to think that because I'm more experienced, I expect you to be able to withstand high levels of pain. I like to play, but I want to play with you. Do you understand that? Sirius was filled with gratitude that Remus had taken the time to say all of this to him, to assuage the worries he'd had when he'd imagined playing with his Mooney. Thank you. Do you need a cuddle, Bug? He asked gently, tugging Sirius to his chest when he nodded with teary eyes. You see why it was important we had this conversation? Yeah, he murmured, leaning up for a kiss and mewling when Remus took the chance to massage the back of his neck gently. You make me feel so treasured. I'm glad. Remus released him, and Sirius pouted a little but allowed him to move backwards. The next conversation is about our triggers. I've told you a little bit about my history, and I'm fairly good at managing my own triggers at this point. The only thing I would ask is that if there's something you want to try, you bring it up to me in a situation like this, and that you don't ask for it in the middle of a sex or a scene. Does that make sense? I get that, Sirius agreed. And you want to know my triggers? Some of them you might not know until they're on top of you. Remus said. And that's perfectly okay. This is exactly why we have safe words in place, and I encourage you to use them, but there are others that you might already know. Some, Sirius agreed. I think any sort of verbal abuse would send me into a bad space, but I like the idea of you talking down to me a little bit. Okay, Remus nodded. So you want to try a little bit of humiliation at some point, but you don't want me to call you mean names? Yeah, Sirius blushed, staring at his knees. Are we going to do all this tonight? No, Remus said immediately, making Sirius look up at him in surprise. This is so I can ascertain danger zones, if you will. Before any scene we do, we'll have a conversation about what we're going to do, so you can decide if you're in the right headspace, okay? Every time we sleep together? Sirius asked in disbelief. Just if we're playing, Remus clarified. If we're engaging in spur of the moment, or what you might hear being called vanilla sex, then we won't have a sit down, but you can always use your safe words at any time in those situations. Like in the bathtub, remember? I remember. Sirius's pulse jumped at remembering, as it was the last time Remus had touched him sexually, despite his teasing. Good, Remus smiled. Is there anything else you think could be a trigger for you? I think that as long as you don't leave me alone when I'm tied up or blindfolded or something, I'll be okay. I know, he gulped. That first night at the club, I had a panic attack when he grabbed me, but that was because I didn't know him and he was scaring me. I trust you, so I think it'll maybe just be trial and error as to anything else spooking me. That's good, Remus nodded, looking for all the world like he was in a lesson, absorbing everything he could. If that changes at all, then you let me know, and I'll add whatever it is to the list. I promise. I trust you too, Bug. Just make sure you trust whatever you're feeling. He held his hand out for Sirius's, holding it between his. Now, this is a little bit awkward, but I don't know how much you already know, and it's important you're informed and prepared. Sirius felt his brow furrow, but nodded for Remus to continue anyways. Anal sex is not something you can just jump into whenever the need strikes. It can take a bit of preparation to make sure that you're clean and... Sirius cut him off quickly, feeling himself turn tomato red. Oh, God, I know this. Okay. Remus gave a little laugh at Sirius's embarrassment. But do you need me to show you how to... No, I do not, he exclaimed. I asked Jamie about it for precisely this reason. I don't want to talk about cleaning my ass out with my moonie. Remus tugged his hand away from his face, lifting his chin and smiling softly at him. If you're sure. I am so sure, Sirius said confidently. And this is the last time I want to talk about it. All right, Bug, Remus laughed. Come here. I'm glad Jamie helped you. He let Sirius hide his hot face in his neck. Although I will say that sometimes things can go wrong on that front. And if they do, it's bound to be a little bit embarrassing, but I'll never make you feel bad about it. If you decide you want to have a go at topping, then I would expect the same from you, yes? Yes, Sirius let out, knowing he should have expected Remus to be this practical and make sure he knew what went into a functioning sexual relationship. Has that happened to you a lot? Once or twice, Remus murmured. A hazard of this practice, I'm afraid. Merely humming, Sirius pressed a kiss to his neck and then took in a deep breath for courage, whispering, I did it for you earlier. Cleaning? He clarified. Just in case, Remus asked with a teasing voice. Just in case. Pressing a wet kiss to his head, Remus tugged him until they were pressed together, chest to chest. Well, if you ever need it, then there is a kit under the sink in my bathroom, and the same in my bathroom at the club. When Sirius let out a quiet, okay, slip through his lips, Remus patted his hip gently and said, Do you want to hear what I have planned for tonight? That perked Sirius right back up, like a dog who just heard the word walk. and immediately sat up straight to look at the older man with eager eyes. "I'll take that as a yes," Remus laughed. "I thought that I'd get you laid out on my bed and show you the new flogger I got. It's your favorite color." He whispered the last part like it was a secret, but it made Sirius so excited to think Remus had taken in everything he'd shared previously. First, the Taylor Swift vinyls, a detail he'd shared so flippantly and never expected to be used elsewhere, and now incorporating his favorite color into a sex toy and making it feel much more personal to him. The man was a dream, so careful and considerate, and everything that Sirius wanted. "Please," the plea escaped his lips before he could hold it back. "Please, will you?" Remus smiled. "And then I thought I might see how you do on my fingers. Play with your hole a little." Cock-twitching in the tight confines of his jeans, Sirius had to silence the moan growing in his throat at even the thought of what his Mooney was going to do to him. "I can see you like that idea," he continued. "Is there anything else you want to try tonight?" "What about you?" "What about me?" Remus returned his question. "Want you to enjoy it too." Sirius licked his lips. "Want to get you off." Remus hummed, kissing him gently. "You don't think watching you go all pink and shivery, seeing your body all laid out for me, you don't think that will get me off?" "It might," Sirius whispered, "but I want to play with you too." "So sweet." He swallowed heavily. "You aren't going to fuck me?" "Not tonight, Bug." "Why?" he whined. "I want it." Remus kissed him gently, clearly trying to suppress a smile at his pleading tone. "I can tell. We're going to work up to it, but that doesn't mean we won't do the in-between things. There's a traditional perception that sex is only penetrative, and I want to show you how to enjoy your body and mine in other ways. Do you get that?" "I trust you to show me." Sirius tried, hiding his petulant frown, even though he understood exactly what Remus was trying to communicate. "Plus," Remus said carefully, "when I finally do fuck you, it'll be so good, Bug. I bet you'll take my cock so well, and I want you to be able to ask for what you want and to know your body well enough to be able to give it to you." He muffled, his initial reaction into Remus's shirt, whining, "Want it now." He felt more than heard Remus's shaky inhale, and he couldn't tell if it was a laugh or a groan. "I know, Bug. Trust me, okay?" "Will you at least let me taste you?" "Fuck." He laughed a little at Remus's moan. "You really want to?" "So much." Entering Remus's bedroom felt a little like he'd just uncovered another part of this man. Instead of the green color scheme, which seemed to dominate the flat, this room was painted in muted shades of blue, and a lovely, patterned wallpaper hung behind his sturdy oak four-poster. All the furniture was simple but expensive looking, and so Remus, it made him feel lighter. He was being trusted with all of this man, even if he didn't know everything about him yet. And more than that, he loved everything he discovered about him so far. "Okay, clothes off, Bug." Sirius raised an eyebrow at him, feeling a little silly since Remus had already seen him naked a couple of times. "You too?" "Me too," Remus confirmed, hands moving to strip off his shirt. "But you need to be much more naked for what I've got planned." Sirius watched him with a watering mouth as Remus's chest was revealed to him. Silvery scars and fluffy brown chest hair, deceptively strong arms, and the little pouch of his stomach. Just remembering that night last week where he got to touch and bite at the older man, it had his cock fattening up in anticipation. When the fabric hit the floor, Remus stepped closer to him until his hands were at the hem of Sirius's shirt, and he gently prompted him. "Bug, can I take it off of you?" "You're so hot," Sirius whined, tongue flickering out to wet his lips. "Can have anything you want." Laughing, Remus tugged the fabric up over his head and tossed it away from them, empty hands framing Sirius's face for a slow, exploring kiss. Moaning, Sirius pressed himself forward until Remus's elbows were at an insane angle, and so his grip shifted, threading his fingers into Sirius's long tresses and holding him close. Humming, Remus let one hand drift down to palm at his ass, giving Sirius his permission to grind his rapidly hardening cock into his thigh, forcing a moan to break free from his throat. Releasing him, panting, Remus asked, "Are you going to be a good boy for me tonight, Bug?" "Please." Sirius let his head fall forward until it rested on the other man's shoulder. "I'll be so good." "Glad to hear it," he said with an amused tone. And Christ, how was he so unaffected? Sirius thought, just as the next instruction cut through his musings. "Jeans off and on the bed then, please." When Remus put some distance between them, he let his hands fall to the button fastening on his trousers and dropped them to the floor quickly, kicking off his socks as well. Shooting a questioning look to the man, he pushed his boxers off his hips as well, nearly falling over when he tried to flick the fabric up into the air to catch them. A snicker escaped him as he balanced himself with a hand on Remus's soft sheets, and he looked up to find Remus watching him, one hand rubbing firmly over the bulge in his corduroy trousers. "Does this turn you on?" "On your front. Head up at the front of the bed, please," Remus requested, without answering Sirius's cheeky question, just an amused quirk of his lips belying the fact that he'd heard. Feeling a little awkward, Sirius climbed up on his hands and knees until he was in the center of the bed, and then laid down on his stomach like he would if he were getting a massage. "Like this?" he asked quietly, turning his face so he could see Remus's. "Just like that, Bug," Remus hummed, stepping backwards with his eyes fixed to Sirius's body, spinning once he reached a set of drawers and quickly extracting something from them. "This is what we're going to use tonight." Remus came back to him, quickly, perching on the edge of the bed and running a gentle hand over Sirius's shoulder blade, letting his fingers trail down over his arm until he had his fingers in his grasp, guiding him to hold the flogger in a loose grip. It was beautiful, long leather tails that were a rich dark red and a heavy black handle, the rubber ribbed for grip. That's what he assumed it was for, at least. He couldn't help but lean forward and press his face into the leather, inhaling once, twice, and letting the scent invade his lungs. His tongue gently wetting the material as he took a strand into his mouth, exploring carefully. Silver eyes drifted up to meet Remus's gentle gaze, a soft smile on his face as he watched Sirius explore, prompting him to sit up a little and release the tassel. "Sorry." "No, Bug," Remus reassured him with a gentle kiss to his forehead, keeping his mouth pressed to the skin as he spoke. "You can explore however you like. These are yours as well." "I like it." Sirius whispered the words like a secret. "I'm so excited." "Good." Remus sighed in something like relief. "You want me to use it on you a little? Give you a taste for it?" "Please," he whispered, feeling like a broken record, pleading for his Mooney to do something, anything. Standing again, Remus tested the weight of the flogger in his hand and gave his forearm a couple of testing hits, and it looked like he adjusted his grip until he was happy. "Okay, Bug, I want you to rest your head on your hands," Remus explained, nodding encouragingly when Sirius checked his new position with him. "Just like that. Good job. I'm not going to restrain you, but sometimes if you can see something coming towards you, then you'll reach out and try and stop it. Does that make sense?" "Yes, Mooney," Sirius affirmed, shutting his eyes and relaxing on the sheets, even as his cock pressed insistently into his abdomen. "What color are you?" "Green." "Good boy," Remus said adoringly, just as the leather tails began to drift over the sole of one foot, tickling him and making his toes curl up. As they trailed higher, Sirius found himself shivering, imagining a multitude of goosebumps appearing in Remus's wake. When the fabric reached his ass, they disappeared for a moment before a myriad of sharp nips covered the skin, a gasp escaping him at the sensation. Repeating the action once, twice, the skin on his backside stung just a little, each hit a little harder than the last. "Color, Bug?" Remus asked sharply, and it occurred to Sirius through the ringing in his ears that he'd maybe asked more than once. Green, I promise," Sirius groaned, his hips pushing back, searching for that sensation again. A gentle hand appeared in his hair, stroking softly through the strands and then trailing across the exposed skin of his back. "Did that feel good?" "So good," Sirius moaned, rutting his cock into the cotton below him. "More?" "You can have more," Remus said nonchalantly, the bed springing back up as he stood once more. A series of sharp hits rained down across his thighs and bottom, and a choked groan left his lips as some of the places Remus had hit him with the flogger before were targeted once more. Soon, teasing touches returned as the material was trained up and over his shoulder blades and down the center of his back, the leather making its way across smooth skin and dipping into the valley of his backside. Biting on his knuckle, the need to have something in his mouth overwhelming, Sirius could no longer hold back the choke whimpers and moans he'd tried to repress. "That's a good boy," Remus praised him, landing 6 sharp hits to his back. "Knew you'd love this. Your skin has gone so pink, Bug. Just like your cheeks when you get flustered for me, "Moony," Sirius whimpered, working his hips harder into the bed, the urge to come getting stronger as Remus's work picked up the pace, alternating between teasing strokes and heavy hits that landed with a sharp thwap. "Please, Moony." "Do you want more?" Remus asked, and Sirius could hear the grin on the bastard's face. "Tell me, Bug." "Yes, please, more," Sirius gasped, an idea escaping his lips before it had formed in his head. "Can I roll over?" Remus hummed in consideration, and Sirius could imagine the picture he made, skin flushed and voice breaking with want, hips humping into the bed like a teenage boy. "Go on, then." He was surprised when his moves were sluggish, and he struggled to roll over like he normally would. Opening his eyes, he saw Remus's amused little grin as he watched him, and then a hand on his hip, helping him to settle back into the sheets. And God, Remus looked incredible like this, a sheen of sweat covering his torso, the flogger in a loose grip by his side, and fluffy hair flopping over his eyes. Ree, he whined. "You, so good." "That's good, Bug." Remus's grin softened into a lovely look that Sirius liked to imagine was just for him, and he couldn't resist making grabby hands for the man until he pressed a hand either side of his head and lowered himself down to kiss him ruthlessly, his tongue dominating his mouth and making his cock jump against his stomach. When he pulled back, he ran his eyes over Sirius's body, and he felt like he could actually feel the heat in his gaze over his body. "Look at that," Remus murmured. "Your cock is leaking all over, getting you so messy." Whimpering, Sirius tried to resist making a grab for the appendage and stroking it for a little relief. "It's for you." "Spread your legs," Remus directed him, climbing up onto the bed with him and settling between his thighs. "We're all so sensitive here." He ran the flogger up the inside of Sirius's thighs, watching the boy watch him with wide eyes, laughing just a little when he shivered violently. The flogger coming down with a flick of his wrist, he let the tails lick a pain on the thin skin there and then repeated the move on the opposite side, moving higher and higher each time until the leather was catching his balls with each hit. Whimpering, Sirius tried to flinch away from the toy. "Color?" The words were sharp, the flogger momentarily still in Remus's grasp as Sirius stared at him with watery eyes. It took him a moment to understand, mouth gaping up at the man. "Good. I'm good. Green." "Okay," Remus murmured, and then, with a hard swoop, he aimed the flogger and let it fall directly over his cock and balls, the leather coming away glistening with Sirius's pre-cum, repeating the action when Sirius cried out, a tear dripping from one eye and falling down into his hair. "How's that, Remus asked, considering Sirius's vibrating body carefully. "Do you want it harder, Bug?" Fuck! Sirius gasped, his cock now a dark red at the tip, a pool of clear liquid on his belly. Like that, again. Remus repeated his hit twice more, and then dropped the flogger to the side. He stayed put between his spread thighs, now running his hands down the sensitized skin and making soothing shh noises. Sirius watched him with his lips drawn between his teeth, chewing hungrily on the flesh as he yearned for Remus to do something, anything, so he could get some relief. He still wasn't prepared for Remus reaching out and sweeping some of the fluid off his belly with a confident finger, bringing the liquid to the head of Sirius's cock and rubbing it into the flesh. So wet for me, aren't you, Bug? Sirius whined, his hips pumping the air uselessly. Please touch me. A wicked grin overtook his face then, and he watched as the man dropped his hand completely. Instead, he brought them to the button of his own trousers, unbuttoning them and lowering the fly. He didn't have any fucking underwear on. Sirius groaned, dropping his head back to the pillow and squeezing his eyes tight for the count of 3, trying to calm himself before he looked back at the man. Only, when he did, Remus was watching him intensely, stroking his cock, slow and steady, a little bead of pre-cum at the tip being smoothed away by a skilled palm and used for lubrication. How he made that look so good, Sirius didn't know. What he did know was that he would kill anyone that tried to get between him and Remus in this moment. The sight of Remus Lupin, cheeks flush and mouth wide open, breathing heavily as his cock disappeared into his fist with every twist of the man's wrist, was something he would treasure forever. It was also about to send him over the edge, just by watching. He was just so... he didn't even know. But he understood a little bit now why Fabian had been jealous that Sirius got to keep him. This fucking man, he was everything. Sirius's moon and his sun and just everything. He'd give him the world. When he reached for his cock, his hand was batted away faster than he thought Remus was capable of at this moment, like he was expecting Sirius to try and touch himself. No, Bug. Please. Remus hummed, leaning over him to reach for something out of the bedside table. Are you going to let me play with your little hole now? Yes, Sirius moaned, arching his neck for a kiss when Remus glanced down at him and smiling into it when his wish was granted. Want you to... Good boy. Remus praised him, uncapping a bottle of lube and squeezing some out onto his index and middle fingers, bringing them down to Sirius's puckered hole and laving over it gently, getting him used to being touched. Do you do this to yourself? Sirius twisted his head, a little embarrassed at the question. Only a couple of times. Remus eased a finger in gently, and Sirius felt himself stretch a little around the intrusion, pressing back into it experimentally and being rewarded with a gentle smile. Do you like it? Angles, Sirius gasped as Remus twisted another finger into him. Remus leaned forward to kiss him, licking into his mouth as he rubbed his fingers gently inside of him. Couldn't find your prostate? Shaking his head slowly, his mouth dropped open in a gasp as Remus found it for him, grinning wickedly when his whole body jerked and a long moan escaped him. There we go, Bug. Mooney found it for you, Yes, Sirius gasped, working his hips in time to Remus's thrusts. There, Mooney, right there. One hand pressing into the covers next to Sirius's head, Remus nosed gently at his cheek until he twisted to kiss him, his fingers maintaining continuous pressure against that spot inside him until he was shuddering. He felt like he was coming apart in the best way, his cock jumping up and blood rushing through his ears, the pleasure so intense that he couldn't even kiss anymore, just panting into Remus's mouth as his golden eyes watched him, full of desire. Are you going to come for me, Bug? Remus teased, increasing the pressure until Sirius was moaning, thrashing with the pleasure that felt white hot in his gut. He moaned, hands grasping Remus's shoulders tightly, fingernails digging into the flesh in a bid to hold on to some semblance of control. "Green, so green. Please." He broke off, tears falling freely from his eyes as the pleasure crested and broke, his cock shooting thick ropes of cum up over both of their chests. A few splatters hitting Sirius's chin from the force of his orgasm, the fingers inside him slowing and then carefully retreating. "Oh," Remus breathed, wiping his lube-slick fingers on the covers and gently wiping the cum from Sirius's chin, sucking it into his mouth. "You're so beautiful, Bug." Sirius surged up for a kiss, his emotions going haywire as he struggled to regain control of his breathing. It felt a little bit like he just had an essential part of his world handed to him, Remus's entire being a revelation he'd just been waiting for. "Mooney," he sobbed a little, crushing the man to his body as he cried. "That was so good." Remus held him gently, scooping the boy to his chest and sitting up on his knees so that Sirius was koala'd to his front, the man then spinning and settling against the headboard. Deftly ignoring the rapidly drying cum painting their chests, Remus murmured soft words into his hair and stroked gentle hands down his spine. He couldn't help it, sucking on the skin of Remus's neck until he left a sizable mark, the man groaning and clearly trying to conceal the shift of his hips, his cock still rock hard under Sirius. "I'm so proud of you, Bug. You did brilliantly." Remus pressed a kiss into his hair and to his shoulder, any part of Sirius he could reach. "Thank you for letting me see you like that." Once his heart rate had calmed and he felt more himself, he shifted a little uncomfortably in Remus's arms, the zipper of his fly pressing into his thigh. "Can I suck you now?" Remus's head dropped back to the cushioned headboard, groaning around his laugh. "Yeah, Bug. If you want to, you can suck me." "Yay," Sirius mumbled, leaning forward to press another kiss to Remus's lips and continuing across his jaw and down his neck. Pausing to shuffle backwards, he tugged at Remus's trousers until the older man lifted his hips and allowed Sirius to tug them off, throwing them behind him. When he turned back to look at Remus, he finally got the full effect of Remus's body on display just for him, without the cover of milky bathwater or the knowledge that Remus wasn't for him. Now, the man was all his and laid out like a meal, his long legs splayed, thick thighs covered in a fine dusting of hair that matched his torso, hard cock nestled in thick pubic hair and drooling just a little into the curve of his hip. Licking his lips, Sirius crawled back up the bed and continued where he laid off, suckling marks into the soft skin over his chest and down past his navel, dipping his tongue inside and shooting Remus a cheeky look. Remus's fingers scratched at his scalp, winding long hair around his hand and tugging until Sirius felt the pressure somewhere in his gut, moaning and pressing his face into the man's groin, tongue flicking out to catch the head of his cock and tasting the salty pre-cum. "You'll tell me if I do it wrong?" Sirius asked shyly, unable to take his eyes away from Mooney's cock long enough to meet Remus's eyes. "You won't," Remus reassured him. "Just watch your teeth." "Okay," Sirius hummed, nuzzling his face into the dark hair in front of him, nosing at Remus's balls and taking one into his mouth, laving the soft skin with his tongue until he heard a groan and was rewarded with a sharp tug. Moving up, he flickered his tongue over the vein that traced up the side of his pink cock until he reached the tip, taking it into his mouth and sucking gently. Eyes flickering up to meet Remus's, he was momentarily stunned by the heat in Remus's gaze, directed entirely at him. "Just like that," the man groaned, his hips twitching up. With his tongue, he pressed his cockhead into the soft palate and laved the underneath softly. Mewling, Sirius swallowed around him and pushed further onto him, wrapping his hand around what wouldn't fit in his mouth. Remus's mouth was fixed open, lips pink and wet as he panted, moaned and groaned, watching Sirius suckle devotedly at his cock. "Oh, Bug, that feels amazing." Pulling off, Sirius continued to stroke at him and opened his mouth to ask a shy question when Remus groaned loudly, hips jerking as he came. "Shit," he moaned, and Sirius felt the hot splatters of cum hitting his cheek, painting his forehead with beads of creamy fluid, ducking to catch the last of him on his tongue. "Sorry, Bug," Remus panted, chest heaving in pleasure as Sirius palmed his balls, just how he would to himself. "I didn't mean to do that." Sirius smiled, releasing his cock and kneeling up to kiss Remus tentatively, unsure whether the man would allow him to with his face covered in cum. "I liked it," he mumbled, mewling when Remus's thumb scooped up some and fed it into his mouth. "You taste so good." The older man cleaned Sirius up and made him feel a little emotional again, the care he was being shown surprising him yet again. Suckling at cum-covered fingers eagerly, he moaned as his cock twitched in an attempt to come back to life. "Was that what you were hoping for, Bug?" Remus asked, a little smile on his face as Sirius snuggled, clean-faced, into his chest. "Maybe a little bit," Sirius mumbled, biting at Remus's chest. Remus POV. Getting them to the bathroom was a little bit of a chore, but he found that to be the case most of the time. Sirius was no different, although Remus found he cared more about his comfort than he did for other subs. "Come on, Bug." Remus guided him under the stream of water, rubbing a palm over the small of his back and reaching for a flannel and shower gel. "Need to get you clean, don't we?" Sirius said intelligently, mouthing at Remus's bicep, and Remus smiled indulgently down at him. It was like a rapture had taken place. When Sirius had pulled off his cock and opened his mouth, he couldn't hold back, so on edge from watching the beautiful boy shake and whimper, coming so powerfully he'd ended up with ejaculate on his chin and all over both of them. The way Sirius had taken in his body, not just glancing over his scars, but finding them attractive, running his fingers over them reverently, mouthing at them and leaving marks where Greyback had. Sirius was making him his, and he fucking loved it. Tugging the ends of his hair, guiding his head under the water, Remus carefully washed and conditioned him, stepping back to put some music on the speaker system when Sirius's eyes were clearer. He hadn't heard it before, but the way Sirius perked up hearing the opening notes of "Don't Blame Me" made him love it already. "I want to see your shower moment, Bug." "Moony," Sirius whined, shaking his head. Stepping back under the spray, Remus laughed, hands on Sirius's hips. "I'm gonna hop under that shower." Remus gestured behind him to where the matching shower head faced Sirius's. "And you're gonna show me, yes?" Sirius's hips had started to move like he wanted to dance, and Remus knew he'd won. Stepping back until he met the cool tile and polished chrome of the wall, he twisted the knob with familiarity until he was being drenched by warm water, never taking his eyes from Sirius. Watching him, a sweet little smile plastered across his face. Said shower moment was relatively tame until the music reached a crescendo, where Sirius opened his arms like he was about to dive off a cliff, mouthing the words to the song with practiced ease and then falling to a crouch as the bass dropped. As the music came to its end, Sirius approached Remus, taking over the job of cleaning his cum from his matted chest hair, and said so quietly he nearly missed it, "Makes me think of you." "Does it?" he hummed, shutting his eyes as Sirius reached up with a handful of shampoo. "Mm-hmm," he agreed. "Especially that bit at the end. When I came, it was like I'd never felt anything like that before. I could be addicted to you so easily. Sometimes I just want to burrow inside of you and stay there forever." As if he'd realized what he'd just confessed, Sirius shoved his face into Remus's neck, withdrawing moments later, spluttering soapy bubbles and making a face so amusing Remus doubled over with the force of his laughter. "Oh dear, Bug," he laughed. "You didn't plan that so well, did you?" "No," Sirius pouted. "It was so embarrassing. At least tell me you felt sort of like that." Watching him, Remus lifted his chin and pressed a gentle kiss to his lips. "You mean when I came like a teenager because I could see your little tongue next to my cock? Yes, Bug. From the moment you asked me if I wanted to play with you." He sighed, wrapping him up soapy and wet and earnest to a fault. You had me wrapped around your little finger." "Yay," Sirius mumbled, creeping up onto his tiptoes like Remus wouldn't notice, suckling his earlobe into his mouth. "That means we get to keep doing that." Humming happily, Remus nuzzled their faces together and kissed him gently, reverently. "Bed?" "Bed." It was still early, dark outside on account of the season, but the clock on his wall hadn't even made it to 10 o'clock yet. So Sirius fetched the book he'd picked earlier in the day, and Remus grabbed one of the many novels he was currently on with, and they sat and read, stark naked under his quilt in companionable silence. Eventually, Sirius began to shift, clearly bored, and Remus lowered his book a smidge to see an eager boy kneeling by his side with his book discarded on the bedside table. Without opening his mouth, Remus raised an eyebrow at him and asked what he wanted. "Can I just—" Sirius asked tentatively, causing Remus to set down his book. "Can you what, Sirius?" He gulped, coming closer to the man until his knees were pressed against Remus's thigh. "I wanted to know if I could just, while you're reading." "Come here, Bug." Remus opened one arm and encouraged him to curl up under it. "What do you want?" "Wanted to explore you a little bit," the boy whispered, running a finger over the line of muscle in his thigh. "I promise I won't distract you." "Oh, but you distract me by existing." Remus hummed, patting Sirius firmly on the hip and leaving a heavy kiss on his brow. "You can, though. Go ahead." "Thank you," Sirius mumbled, shifting out of his grip and moving down the bed. Picking his book back up, Remus picked up where he had left off until there was a gentle pressure on his thighs, hands guiding him to spread his legs. When he glanced up again, Sirius was propped up with his head on his elbows, pressing reverent kisses to the inside of Remus's thighs, occasionally dipping in to create a mark. As he got closer to Remus's soft cock, his progress was slower and slower, and then he tongued gently at Remus's foreskin and brought him into his warm, wet mouth. "Is that what you were wanting?" Remus asked gently, cutting a hand through his damp hair and watching as Sirius relaxed to a point of near sleep. "Just needed something in your mouth?" Sirius barely made a noise, just tongued at Remus's cock and opened his eyes to stare up at him. "All right, love," Remus acquiesced, lifting his book with one hand and beginning to read. "Be a good boy and keep your Mooney's cock warm, That brought a low moan from Sirius, and it sent Remus's thoughts spiraling, the words on the page no longer mattering as he created scenarios to appease this part of Sirius's brain, imagining him bringing him into the office and sitting him on his cock while he did his work, having him under the desk with his cock in his mouth. Like a dog with a bone, he joked. His little puppy, keeping his cock warm and safe until he was ready to use it. It could have been minutes later, but it could have been an hour too. When Remus came back into the room, Sirius's mouth was still on his cock, his tongue still gently playing with his foreskin. Only now, the mattress was gently moving. So he dropped the book from his grip silently, watching as Sirius suckled at him, eyes closed and hips working his own cock into the bed. "Such a good little bug," Remus mused. "Keeping Mooney's cock warm and safe and getting off so quietly, aren't you?" A broken whine escaped Sirius's lips, and when he looked, really looked, Remus could see that his crotch was damp with the boy's spit and pink with the increased blood flow, even if he wasn't hard. And he wouldn't be, not for a few more hours at least. He wasn't 23. "It's all right, Sirius," Remus reassured him, fixing him with a gentle stare as his hips began to work, the sheets harder and faster. "Why don't you come up here, You've done such a good job," he praised. Sirius shook his head minutely, closing his eyes again as his hips began to jerk erratically, muffling a moan into Remus's groin as he came into the sheets. "Oh, Bug," Remus spoke with false sympathy. "Did you like that a little bit too much? Sirius was blushing head to toe and nodded as his breath came harshly through his nostrils, pulling off of Remus when the man gave a harsh tug to his hair. He could hardly believe it. How beautiful the boy was, innocent in his desire, but bold enough to push, to ask for what he wanted. Waking to an octopus curled around him, still sleeping soundly with little gruffly noises escaping him at every exhale, Remus watched the sun rise over his balcony with a happy heart and vague outline of what he wanted to do with his Monday. Almost all of it involved Sirius. It had been amusing at first, watching Sirius move around his flat, exploring like he had a right to know every story that decorated the walls. By lunchtime, it had gotten a little bit tiring. Not Sirius, just his inarticulate request for punishment. He didn't have a reputation for brat taming, but it seemed like he was maybe going to have to get used to it. Bug, he warned, watching Sirius sit on top of his dining table, a feat for which he had been reprimanded at least 3 times this morning. You either get down or you're getting a spanking. Your choice. Sirius quirked an eyebrow, a cocky smile that Remus hated painted across his face, deciding his fate for him then and there. Okay. Remus stood, slapping his hands on his thighs and jerking his head in a gesture for the boy to follow him. Here's what we're going to do. He stopped outside the door to the spare room, not wanting Sirius to associate his bedroom with punishment. Facing Sirius, he grasped the boy with a hand behind his neck and pulled him until they were flush. You're going to get 15 spanks for being rude, and a further 5 for ignoring your warnings. Do you understand me? Sirius nodded, eager eyes betraying that this was what he was hoping for all along. Okay, Mooney. When we walk through this door, you were telling me that you were giving me a green light to punish you. Unless the word red comes out of your mouth, you will get 20 spanks. Are we understood? Yes, Mooney, Sirius said, a little quieter this time as he processed what he had been told. Dropping his grip on the boy, he turned and opened the door, walking through without any further words to Sirius. He was interested to see how this would turn out, for Sirius to learn the difference between spanking to arouse someone and behavior correction, to see just how hard he liked to be hit. He heard the deep breath Sirius let out when he walked into what was, for all accounts, a regular guest bedroom. Sitting heavily on the edge of the bed, Remus patted his lap and watched Sirius make tentative steps towards him, finally coming to a stop directly in front of his spread legs. Pants down then, Bug. Oh, Sirius stammered. No, pants down. He'd been told before that he was quite scary when he slipped into his punishment mode. He knew now that that was true, seeing Sirius's face drop and him bring his lip between his teeth for a nervous second. If you wanted a spanking for fun, Sirius, then all you had to do was ask for it. He paused for a thought, analyzing his boy's expression. I don't think you'll enjoy this. If you need to use your safe word, use it. Okay, Mooney. Sirius pulled his trousers down, sheepish as he bent uncomfortably over Remus's lap, shivering as Remus held him down firmly. They'd barely made it through 5 hits when the first sob ratcheted its way out of his chest, and it was just around 10 that Sirius began apologizing in a long, mumbling string. Remus thanked him for the apologies and continued each time. At the 16th hit, Sirius began to wail the word no, sending Remus's heart racing, and the urge to finish early kicked in. Taking a breath, he raised his arm to continue when a quiet "Red" reached his ears. Kicking into aftercare mode, Remus soothed a hand over Sirius's red backside and pulled his pants back up, urging him to stand and then bringing him to straddle his lap, cuddling him close and muttering reassuring words as he sobbed into his shirt. Good boy, Remus praised him, rubbing soothing circles into and over his t-shirt. You did so well, Bug. We're done now. I'm sorry, Sirius whimpered, making fists in the material of Remus's shirt and holding tight. Couldn't take it anymore. Oh, you did so well, Bug. Remus reassured him. I'm so proud of you for using your safe word. My good boy, aren't you? Am I? Sirius pulled back, voice wobbling. Yes, Remus said fiercely, taking Sirius's cheek in his hand and making him meet his eyes. You did exactly as I asked and took your punishment so well. It's all forgotten now, Bug. You need to be more mindful in the future of other people's property, but I won't hold what you did over you. I'm proud of you, Cuddlebug. Just like that? Just like that. You misbehaved. You were punished. You won't do it again. He smiled at Sirius's violent headshake, agreeing with his final statement. Beginning, middle, end. I'll hear nothing more of it now. It's time for me to look after you. They had a long way to go, for Sirius to understand exactly how much power he held in their dynamic, to learn how to ask for what he wants, how to navigate each other's spaces respectfully. The biggest one would be playing safely, but Remus was confident that they could do it together. Not for the first time, he entertained the possibility that he and Sirius could do some real good for each other.